Yo, what's going on, everybody? Come on in. Press that thumbs up. If you are not subscribed to my channel, press that subscribe button. Shout out to all my new subscribers. I want to say thank you for pressing that subscribe button and subscribing to me. Leave a comment in the comment section. Quick question. How many of you saw the video of the cheating pastor? There is a viral video that is out right now of a pastor who was sleeping with a woman in the congregation who has a husband. The husband obviously knows the pastor. They both obviously went to the church, and the pastor is a married man, and he was meeting a married woman at a hotel, and the husband found out about it and recorded the wife on her way to the hotel, and she, basically made her knock on the door so that the pastor opened up the door and confronted the pastor and called the pastor's wife in front of him and told the pastor's wife that, yo, your husband is here at a hotel with my wife, and they've been doing this for a long time. They've been doing this for a while. They've been hooking up with each other. They've been sleeping together. They've been having sex together. They've been fucking. And this is the Christian church, y'all. This is the Christian church. I grew up in a Christian church, Church of God in Christ to be exact. And although they were very strict, women couldn't wear makeup, and they had to dress a certain way. Men had to conduct themselves a certain way, and things of that nature. Very strict. And you always going to hell for everything. When I was 2 years old, my mother found this church and she started going. And then my father started going to the church as well. So I grew up in this church. And, you know, you hear different things, you see things, you know, as you grow up in this environment. This was a home for me. We would have Sunday dinners at this church. I was always at this church. I was in the choir. This is where you learn how to sing, all this kind of stuff. But the pastor, he was sleeping with a lot of women in the church. And I remember he used to be this one little girl who was older than I was. But she used to rock back and forth. She used to rock back and forth. It was like a nervous condition that she had. And we all knew that she was what we would call today special needs. You know, uh, she was a little slow. She was a little touched. You know what I'm saying? But she was, a beautiful person. We loved her. You know, this little girl grew up being passed around in the church, basically, where she didn't really have a family per se. One of the family members went to the church and, you know, um, brought her along. And so they just kind of just passed her around in the church. So she would stay with certain individuals within the church. And sometimes she would stay with the pastor and wife. There was a young boy who grew up in the church as well. And of course, he was related to, one of the ladies, in the church. Well, these two started dating. The girl who would rock back and forth and the young man, they started dating because now they're older. They're teenagers and they're getting older. So they start dating. And I remember one day, this is years later, she just stands up in church. People are giving their testimonies. So, she stands up, and everybody's just thinking, waiting, okay, she's going to give her testimony. And she starts to speak. And she tells everyone in the whole congregation that the pastor has been molesting her from the time that she was a little girl. And that his wife knew that this was happening. Sometimes she would be in the bed while he was doing it, while he would make her perform oral sex on him and or have sex with her. Sometimes the wife would be in the bed, but she would, of course, pretend like she was asleep. Now, backstory: the pastor used to beat his wife. In nursing school, when my teacher was actually the pastor's wife's cousin. That's a long story how we found all that out. She asked me if I went, that I went to church. She said, "You just seem like you just grew up in church." And I told her which church I went to. She said, My cousin was, was married to the pastor." I was like, wow. So to make a long story short, the pastor was beating the wife and had her fearful. And he was molesting this young girl all the way up into teenager, all the way up until she was a teenager, almost an adult, where she had enough courage to break it off. And she had enough courage to tell the whole congregation that she had been molested by the pastor and how his wife knew that this was going on all these years and she did absolutely nothing. She did absolutely nothing. You know, it easily could have just been swept under the rug. Nobody could have ever known. She could have just kept quiet about it. But it needed to be exposed. And she had enough courage to be able to just say, this is what was happening to me. And he couldn't deny it. He couldn't deny it. And to fast forward, this pastor ended up dying of cancer, prostate cancer. And I remember him being in the hospital and my father going to see him because he kept asking for my father, as if my father could give him some form of, sympathy or something of some sort. But he was just really remorseful, apologetic, and was afraid, that his time was coming and he was dying. But we have to be careful, with these religions that were made and set up for us, because the Catholic Church, the Christian Church, they're both the same. And it's easy to get caught up in them because they talk about Jesus and love, but not realizing that you're becoming a slave to these religions, and they're binding you and controlling you. And I believe that coming back to who we really are is key to us being free. Because you have to understand, a lot of these religions were used to control us, to manipulate us, and to keep us in the bondage that we are in mentally, and control us, and to keep us in constant fear, and for your enemy to be able to come in and control you the way that they have been able to control you. But a lot of people hide under religion. And I'm not saying that this is the situation in the case for everybody, but we have to understand that these particular religions have been the gateway to our destruction as so-called Black people, as so-called African American people. And we have to release ourselves from these type of bondage. We have to release ourselves from it. But we need to be able to speak and tell our stories. I want you guys to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you all on the next video. Peace out.